So hello and welcome to the video. If you want to travel in business class for less, and perhaps even for less than the cost of travelling in premium economy, then you're in the right place. This is the second video in the series. The first can be found up here and also down in the description below, and I'd recommend you check that one out before watching this one. That video talked about why taxes make this possible. This video will show you how to turn other people's inconvenience into convenience for you. And I'll also help you with the logistics of starting one of these trips and avoiding catastrophe. So stick around.
Hi, I'm Matt. Over the last 25 years, I've travelled a lot. I've lived in 5 countries on 4 continents. I've flown over 1.3 million miles. I've visited over 100 countries, every American state, but I'm nowhere near done. So hit subscribe and perhaps you'll pick up some hacks, hints and tips to make your next trip better.
So the second reason why an ex-EU fare can be cheaper is convenience. Of course, if you live in London, then travelling away from London to pick up an itinerary that brings you back to London before travelling on to your ultimate destination is clearly very inconvenient. But these fares are not intended for London residents. They are intended for people who are prepared to take a slower option if it saves them money versus a direct option. So looking at flights from Copenhagen to New York in September, the SAS direct option is £2,418, while the indirect option with British Airways is £1,431, a 41% saving. So an ex-EU fare can save some significant money if the alignment of taxes and convenience works for you. A real-world example is from a friend of mine who was looking to buy a property in Spain and knew he needed to go to Chicago between trips to Spain. So instead of booking 3 round-trip flights, he only booked 2. Even though he had to pay the air passenger duty as he stopped in London, it represented a substantially cheaper option for him. A final illustration of how this may work for you is to compare a premium economy direct fare versus a business class fare on an ex-EU ticket. The most extreme examples of these take advantage of that Saturday night rule. A premium economy ticket from London to New York in September without a Saturday night costs a fairly ridiculous £2,766, whilst a business class trip from Copenhagen, which lasts for a night longer but critically includes a Saturday night stay, costs only £1,431. That's a 48% saving for travelling in a higher class. Taking out the Saturday night handicap, you'll rarely find an ex-EU business class fare that is cheaper than the direct premium economy fare. Although that difference can be as little as a couple of £100, which could make an ex-EU a no-brainer, particularly considering the extra tier points and avios you'll harvest from travelling in the higher class. So you're sold on an ex-EU and you've found one that works for you. But your ticket will start and end from somewhere overseas, like Copenhagen, as we saw in the example earlier. So what do? A chunk of the subject matter of these videos overlaps with what I included in my tier point run video series, which you can find here and again in the description. If you've made it this far into this video, I'm pretty confident you'll get value out of watching those videos too. And in them I talk a lot more about the tier point consequences of these sorts of trips. One thing I do need to repeat here though are the consequences of skipping the first and last legs. Wouldn't it be great if you could buy one of these fares, then get on in London and get off again in London, skipping the whole Copenhagen thing? So, can you skip the first leg? No. If you do, then all further legs on your booking will be automatically cancelled. So that's an easy one. No. Can you skip the last leg? Well, that's a trickier question. If you dump that last leg, British Airways has the right to punish you in a number of ways. Boiling oil, toothpicks underneath the fingernails, warm champagne, that sort of thing. But they almost certainly won't. If you did drop a last leg gratuitously, perhaps every week, there is a risk that something would happen, as you would be willfully and knowingly breaching the conditions of carriage on a regular basis. You should, though, take that last leg, although many people don't, without consequence. I've always taken the last leg of all of the flights like this that I've booked, although I have the time and I like the tier points. More about all of this in those tier point run videos. So you certainly have to take the first leg, and that brings up two options. Do you go out to the turnaround city ahead of time, or do you do what is known as a back-to-back? Get it? A back-to-back means you fly back to London on the aircraft you flew out on. This means you displane the plane, clear all entry formalities, clear all exit formalities, and make it back to the gate before that plane turns around. That may sound bonkers, but it can actually represent lower risk than by travelling out on a different plane, as I'll explain in a moment. A back-to-back would only be possible if you have no checked luggage. There is no way you would be able to reclaim your bags, get all the way back round to check-in, check the bags back in again, and then make it to the gate. In some places, notably Amsterdam and Copenhagen, it is risk-free to do a back-to-back because the airports co-mingle arriving and departing passengers. So you get off the plane and you're already at the departure gate with no formalities to complete. Other airports, such as Charles de Gaulle in Paris, are so big and so large you've got very little chance of making it all the way through and back to the gate in time. FlyTalk has an excellent thread which lists all BA destinations and grades them for back-to-backs. That is linked in the description. The advantage of doing a back-to-back is that you'll be travelling out and back in the same plane. If your outbound flight is delayed, then your return flight will also be delayed. If you travel out on a different plane with the intention of connecting, you'll be completely scuppered if your outbound plane is delayed or even cancelled. Miss that first leg, as we've seen, and all of your itinerary will be cancelled. Turn up late for that first leg and you'll be at the hands of the outstation's ground staff as to what they can do for you. There are reports of ground agents in London helping out when there is mass, widespread disruption, but I wouldn't bank on it. So if a back-to-back is not possible, or you're not brave enough to attempt one, my advice would be to book your outbound leg considerably in advance of your first flight on your ex-EU itinerary. Ideally the night before, but certainly don't leave yourself less than 4 hours on the ground at your turnaround point, and even then I'd have an eye on contingency options. I've never attempted a back-to-back, although I would attempt one in Amsterdam or Copenhagen where it is risk-free. But I love travelling, so spending a day in an interesting location before my ex-EU trip starts has never been a hardship. It extends my trip a little, and these days it'll give me an opportunity to harvest more content for this channel. I'm looking forward to spending a day in Sofia before my tier point run starts later this year, and I've also enjoyed nights in Dublin and Bucharest before starting trips before. So that's how you snag a seat for perhaps half the price the guy next to you paid. This guy's good, isn't he? If I were you, I would subscribe to his channel so you don't miss any of his other content. Like this video too, because I believe that helps with something called the YouTube algorithm, and also a comment seems to be a good idea as well. Right, where's that drinks trolley?